Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha, and I am here with my good friends, Catherine and Dan and Kenji. And hopefully, we've got Jason and Lori jumping on here in a little bit. But if not, we're going to go ahead and get started. Anyway, we're talking about the book Sacred Contracts by Caroline Myss. We are in chapter 4 at the section titled The Four Archetypes of Survival: Child, Victim, Prostitute, and Sabotuer. But before we get going with that, and that's in the hard copy, that's page 110. I'm going to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then Catherine, you can take it with the reading.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody. This is Dan Sislick in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Kenji, you're muted.
Good morning, Kenji and Gourmet again. All right.
Good morning. It's Catherine Clement. Give me just a second. All right. Hopefully that works. Okay. The four archetypes of survival, child, victim, or the four archetypes of survival: child, victim, prostitute, and saboteur. Current attitudes hold that our characters and personalities are formed during childhood through a combination of nature and nurture. Indeed, during the first 2 decades of life, we make our first promises to ourselves to provide for and protect ourselves. Many people have told me that as adolescents, they promised themselves they would never be physically abused or humiliated again. Children make vows to themselves that they will become scientists, artists, or mothers, or simply find a way to become wealthy. These commitments are part of our path in the physical world. All are influenced by the four primary archetypes. During the first years of our lives, we come to realize that the quality of our physical lives depends on our sense of personal power, on our ability to survive. Long before we become emotionally and spiritually empowered, we must engage our personal power in the material world. We also begin to understand that we must deal with moral issues or suffer the consequences. In engaging with the physical world and the moral choices that present themselves, we develop self-esteem. This is the beginning of spiritual maturity. Four primary archetypes, the child, victim, prostitute, and saboteur, symbolize our major life challenges and how we choose to survive. Together, they represent the issues, fears, and vulnerabilities that cause us to negotiate away the power of our spirits within the physical world. They also can come to represent spiritual strengths for dealing with real life and spiritual issues. These four archetypes are like the four legs of a table on which our sacred contract rests. The table legs represent our relationship to the ground beneath our feet and to the universal energy that supports our life. They might be straight or curved or embellished with carvings and images, depending on how these four archetypes work within our psyches during the course of our lives. But they need to be stable to support the weight of the tabletop, our life and mission. All four archetypes influence how we relate to material power, how we respond to authority, and how we make choices. These archetypal energies are neutral, and I must reinforce that point here because of the connotations of their names. Although it can be difficult to see how the victim, prostitute, and saboteur can provide us with powerful and supportive imagery, they do, and you will. You'll come to see how even the most common variant of the child archetype, the wounded child, can help you deal with your life today. These four archetypes are the intimate companions of your intuition. They make you conscious of your vulnerabilities, your fear of being victimized. They allow you to see how you sabotage your creative opportunities or abort your dreams And in the future, they will become your allies in fulfilling opportunities and dreams. Your archetypes will become your guardians and will preserve your integrity, refusing to allow you to negotiate it away under any circumstance. Your archetypes can help you transcend the shadow belief that, quote, everyone has a price, and allow you to see that you are not for sale. They will allow you to become completely self-reliant. Through them, you will come to see options where others see excuses. The richest reward in working with these survival archetypes, however, reveals itself in the manner in which your contract unfolds. While it is a given that you have contracts to meet certain people, it is not determined ahead of time what kind of interaction you will have with each of them. That is up to you and, of course, to them. You can choose how you interact, but the more conscious you are about the patterns that influence your behavior, the more likely it is that your choices and the lessons you get from them will be positive. If your choices are formed only by your unconscious, however, and you are unaware of the archetypal energies influencing you, you will more likely act out of insecurity and defensiveness. By remaining aware of the archetypal energies, you stay conscious of both your divinity and your potential and the everyday world. Through your archetypes, you will find your own middle way, the path of your sacred contract. The child, guardian of innocence. The child archetype is our beginning point. We most easily identify with the child, especially after several decades of popular books and workshops on the inner child. This archetype establishes our perceptions of life, safety, nurturing, loyalty, and family. Its many aspects include the wounded child, the abandoned or orphaned child, the dependent child, the innocent child, the nature child, and the divine child. These energies may emerge in response to different situations in which we find ourselves. Yet the core issue of all the child archetypes is dependency and responsibility. When to take responsibility, when to have a healthy dependency, when to stand up to the group, and when to embrace communal life. The stages of growing up, from coming to the age of reason at about 7 to entering adolescence at around 13 to reaching the official age of adulthood at 21, represent plateaus of spiritual and physical maturation. When we are completely dependent from birth to age 7, we develop the first skills for taking care of ourselves, our bodies, and our possessions. At age 7, we begin learning what it means to be responsible not just for our belongings, but for our actions and deeds as well. Through ages 7 to 13, we develop further emotionally as we are introduced to larger issues of morality, ethics, loyalty, and the rules of relationships. During adolescence, we become self-aware, self-conscious, and self-centered. We become aware of, if not consumed with, the power of our mind, the pull of our heart, and the passion of our body. During these wild years, images of all that you could be or all that you fear you will never become also step to the fore. During your late teens and early 20s, you discover your vulnerabilities as an adult, along with your strengths and talents. You make substantial choices about your life, and even though you will doubtless change your mind many times or circumstances will reroute you, this is the beginning of your real contact with the world of physical responsibility, separate from your tribe. Finally, the power of the spirit emerges around the age of 21 as you begin to see beyond the physical aspect of life to find symbolic meaning in your actions, from political activism to social idealism to love and spiritual exploration. Around age 28, you naturally transition into the next cycle of your life as an interconnected, responsible adult. The process that I have just described is, of course, how we ideally mature. Because of the complex challenges of everyday life, however, This spiritual maturation varies for most people. From an archetypal point of view, when these cycles are not followed in some way, adults will find it difficult, if not impossible, to be responsible for themselves in the physical world and to create successful relationships. Your inner child will exhibit aspects of the wounded or orphan child and will reflect that somewhere along the line you did not receive the nurturing necessary for you to become responsible and independent. And so you may well spend the early years of adulthood trying to heal and compensate for these deficiencies. Confronting the child archetype within you awakens a new relationship with life, a fresh beginning. Regardless of which aspect of the child you relate to most intimately, this archetypal pattern brings you into contact with the untapped resources connected to creative thought. This is the core of the innocent child, the sensation that anything and everything is possible. As the guardian of your innocence, the child helps heal, repair, and put a stop to the inner-directed abuse of the wounded child. If you are consumed with the wounded, neglected, abandoned, or orphaned child's psyche, you need to identify or initiate a new relationship or creative enterprise that makes you appreciate your life. Ask your child what it needs in order to heal or feel nurtured or cared for. The child often inspires you to act outside restricted boundaries or to explore an adventure without the burdensome weights of the adult mind. Indulge some of these inspirations as a means of making contact with your inner child. Don't become over-attached to the wound, however. Don't overindulge the child so that it becomes an inner brat, but give it the support it needs to grow up. Let's see how long this next part is. It's pretty long, actually, but it takes us to the next one. So let's get through this first one, if that's okay. A little bit more reading. Ollie's story, Boy Interrupted. When children are forced to take on more responsibility than they should have to at an early age, their spiritual development is disrupted. An adult who feels that he never had a childhood can feel resentful or bitter either towards his parents or about life in general. We suffer deeply when we are deprived of those precious years when we are meant to live in our imagination between the realms of fantasy and reality. Native American tribes, such as the Hopi, believe that it takes a spirit 7 years to incarnate fully into physical form. During that time, the child is watched over and cared for by his guardian spirits, who then turn the primary care of the child's imagination over to the parents. Fairy tales, folk stories, and traditional lore about Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy are meant to preserve children's sense of wonder. Without a connection to the fantastic, magical realm, hopes and dreams are hard to envision. At age 6, Ollie arrived home from first grade to discover that his mother had left for good. Even Ollie's father was shocked because his wife had not given any indication that she was miserable enough to take flight. Suddenly, Ollie was charged with helping take care of his 4-year-old twin sisters. Instead of being allowed to play with his friends after school, Ollie had to color or play games with his sisters as a stand-in for a babysitter. As the years went by, his responsibilities around the home increased. By age 10, he was preparing meals, cleaning house, and doing the laundry. My father did the best he could given the circumstances, Ollie said. He came home straight from work and tried to spend as much time with us as he could. But he was tired and had his own share of caretaking to do. Sometimes he would give me the old, "you have to be the man of the house" routine, and then apologize that things could not be different. But I hated every minute of it. I couldn't play baseball in the summer or sports during the school year because I was never sure if I could make practice or the game. I don't even remember now what it felt like to be a child. Ollie's childhood had a profound effect on both his professional and personal life. His job as a computer software vendor included occasional travel. About a year into this job, he said, I started to add an extra day here and there on my trips without letting my boss know. I felt that I deserved it because I was putting so much time into my work. I didn't realize it then, but I was doing this to get back to my childhood. I wanted to, quote, go out and play, and this is the way I did it. In time, Ollie's extra day habit was discovered and he was fired. He had married at age 22, and now at 28, he was unemployed and his wife had to support the household. I told her that finding another job would not be a problem since everything in this world is connected to computers. I started looking for a job a few days after I left the old one, but I couldn't find one that seemed right for me. The weeks of being unemployed turned into months, and my wife was getting increasingly frustrated with me. I think she was picking up the fact that I did not want to go back to work. I liked being supported and taken care of. I told her I was trying my best, but I wasn't really trying at all. Ollie's wife eventually presented him with an ultimatum, either find a job or move out. It was one of those ultimatums that no matter which end I chose, I would have to find a job, he said. Ollie did go back to work, again selling computers, but whatever ambition he had at his previous job was now replaced by resentment. I was angry going to work, being at work, and coming home from work. I had no place to run anymore, and finally I had a breakdown. Ollie entered therapy and, with the help of his counselor, began to excavate his inner child. I discovered so much about myself. I knew that I had regrets about my early years, but I never imagined how consumed I was by my feelings of abandonment. I realized that my psyche ordered my life around my feeling that I had been abandoned by my mother and forced to take her place. And the irony was that as an adult, I was now abandoning my responsibilities just as my mother had. I wanted to experience now what should have been a part of my life then. I now wonder if my mom had a missing childhood as well and left us to find that part of herself. When I think of her in that way, I feel compassion for her because I doubt that she could ever understand the real source of her pain. My abandoned child was so active in my psyche that it ordered everything in my life. And we'll stop there. What do you guys think?
Interesting. That really opened some things about my own life that I've never really, I think we've touched on before in various other chats, but that kind of really nailed it on the head in some ways. Mine was, some of the things I felt were a little different, but I think some of the aspects of it are there. For me, it wasn't so much that my parents weren't there. They were there, but they weren't parents in the sense of being what I think parents should have been. So in a way, you know, I felt that a lot of that aspect was there because they were there, somehow food managed to be in the house, but I think that was more from my grandmother. Um, you know, um, I think my dad went to work. I honestly don't remember ever seeing him get up and go or that. My mom was there, but a lot of times she was locked in her room. So absent, but not absent. And it's, I think some of that has played out even in my life because I'm there and I'm involved and like to be involved in things and like to be a part of life. But there are times where sometimes it's hard, I guess, in some ways. And I just tend to want to keep to myself too. So this was kind of eye-opening in a lot of ways for me. Wow.
I think the four legs on the table and her saying that each one needs to be represented in the right way, or the balance of the table is off. That being the child, the prostitute. I forget, you know what I'm talking about. I can really relate, and it lays it out in a way, because like Dan said, we've talked about this before.
It was interesting. You were reading the part about the Hopi and how they think that, you need that full like 7-year cycle and things like that. And in a roundabout way, I kind of that feeling I think I tend to agree with that, because as a kid, I did have my moments where I played and got to go and do things like normal kids, but there was always in the back of my mind, possibility of going home and having mom explode, whenever, or, this blowing up, or having to sneak down and get on the phone to call my grandparents to come get us if they could, if our parents, that type of thing. And so I never had that carefree sense of childhood and of being safe and protected in a roundabout way, because of how my parents acted and stuff at times. So I think I get that with the 7-year cycle, because I think I definitely grew up in a lot of ways, making sure my sister and I were both as okay as we could. And it's stressful. It's hard.
It lays it out pretty well. That 7-year span, and you can see what you didn't get in that 7-year span, and it's evident why me and you at 64, 65 are so much alike. What you just said is very much what I grew up in. I never worried about my brother because I was too stuck in my head, but my mom was was the mentally insane one, and my dad was just trying to make a living. And so yeah, we grew up in a lot of dysfunction. I don't know, kids, we don't know that it's dysfunctional when we're in it, I don't think. But boy, I quickly developed behavioral issues. By 4 or 5, they had me into a psychiatrist, because it wasn't them, it was me. But I'm so grateful for these books and for this being hammered on me over the years, because I'd already be dead. I hate abuse. We only get one shot at this. Recently, I've been really angry at God, because it's like, how could you let it happen? I didn't do anything to deserve it. But again, that's the victim mentality that I want to stay away from. And I choose to live in the solution, because I live in the negativity my whole entire life, and that did not work. So I don't talk much. I'm going to shut up.
I think everybody that I think every family has a slight, small form of dysfunction. I don't think there's a perfect family anywhere, and I understand that, and I accept that. But I also believe that, some families are a little more normal than a lot of others. But I know growing up, I picked up on the ones I knew well enough, on the ones whose families also had a little dysfunction. And I kind of gravitated towards them in a sense, because it gave me a sense of familiarity, I guess. But at the same time, I also didn't share really openly and tell anybody anything what was going on, out of fear and thank God, family members within my family, my grandparents did what they did. But um, and, and I think that's part of what I'm so looking for and driving for and wanting now, but yet I haven't found it. And I think part of it is because as much as I'm wanting that and desire that, I'm don't trust and enough. I'm very open and very free with some of what I go through. I explain stuff to people and stuff, but to get down and deep down in and to really open and trust, that's another whole area, and I think that's part of why I'm still looking for what I'm looking for and haven't found it.
About 18 months ago, a friend of mine paired me with a friend of hers who had gone through some cancer, and she thought that we might make a good pair to talk about maybe what was going on with us. So I get on the call with her, and she introduces herself, tells me a little bit about what she's been through and what she's going on, and then it was my turn. And as I started to speak, I started to hyperventilate. It just came out of nowhere, and it was pouring out of me like really just, I mean, I was blabbing all over this poor girl. And she said to me, I didn't sign up for this and I can't do this. And she said, I gotta go. And she hung up. And I was devastated because for the first time in my entire life, that pool of garbage, I had tapped it, and I unknowingly didn't know it was going to come out, but it was. And unfortunately, I put the lid back on it, and it's still in there.
It's really hard to know how to express yourself because different situations, obviously, and I am aware that lid can come off and be like a pressure cooker blowing the lid off and splatter all over everybody. And I try not to. And sometimes I don't talk because I can't get it out. And it's not easy this week, especially losing my lifelong best friend. But it's easy to end up in the prostitute archetype because you sell yourself for anything just to get that stuff you missed when you were a kid. I never had those 7 years in the beginning either.
Does the prostitute, is that the one that won't hold yourself accountable? Is that what the prostitute is?
No, it's that you'd sell yourself for what you're
Which one,
missing.
which one doesn't hold you accountable? Which one says, I was abused, so I don't need to do this? Or you just don't hold yourself accountable. There's no inner, that, like it said when she was reading, that conviction to continue on.
I'm not sure on which one that is. I know it's a factor and it's there. Um,
And I also know what it's like. I thought that when I came home to Maine, that I would be able to see the people that I thought cared about me, but nobody cares about me here, really. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just they got their own lives going on, and the people I worked with, I didn't know they had passed away, and I looked up my friend. I'm thinking I'm gonna look him up, and I'm gonna go make amends, and we're gonna talk. And I learned he died in 2019, and I just was devastated. Because I can't go see him. And I can't tell him how much the time that we had together meant so much to me. I can't tell him that. I can, but I'm not going to see that expression. The
I want to
child,
believe that somehow he knows.
the child made a lot of mistakes. That's why the child can't run the show. Because the child acts like a child.
In some ways, I'm like, what childhood? Yeah, I don't remember that. I missed a lot of that.
It's interesting how, because over the last little while, I've been really thinking about some of my past and not trying to connect so much to the bad aspects of it, but some of the aspects that I remember of the good times and going back to a friend who had talked about having a grade school friend that they've been friends with all this time, and I'm sitting there going, you know, I don't have any friends, per se from that I don't even have friends from my high school period that I really hang out and do things with. And I'm looking back at my, how do I say this? My core family, I guess I'll say it, because my birth father, he's passed away quite a number of years ago. My stepdad's passed away now. My real mother's still alive, but I'm working on that. But even with my own sister, I don't have a deep rooted connection, which at one time we did, which I would like to, but I don't know if she would ever even be open to it because of the hurt and hatred and animosity she has towards me that I've been told about. So even for me, the connections I have are with my family here, but even as I'm getting, like what Kenji said, I look at their lives, they have 4 kids, they have grandkids, they have all their coming and going. So even there, I don't have, and as an adult, I'm feeling in some ways some of the same feelings I had as a kid of, except for my grandparents, who there is around me that really is there. Even though I know my brother and his wife here, they've helped me out and done a lot. But even then, because we're not blood brothers and we didn't grow up in those formative years from 0 to like 7 or 1, there isn't that connection like he had with his own twin brother. So for me, in going through and listening to some of this and hearing some of this, it really highlights and brings out even more some of the feelings of, in a roundabout way, and loneliness loneliness, and that in some weird roundabout ways, I'm all I've got. Hence why I push. Hence why I keep pushing forward, and I keep, I can't just give up. I can't just break apart. I can't just break up. I can't. So in that sense, that's the other side of it. Even from back as a kid, I couldn't just fall apart as a kid when there were plenty of times I wanted to. So interesting chapter.
I'd love.
Falling apart as a kid wasn't an option for me. If you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about
Don't tell me
mentality.
you got that too.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
You're not special.
Well, I wonder why that we're all kind of similar. You know what I'm saying? It's not like
Does
it's rocket. It's
everybody?
not. This isn't like rocket science. It's like when certain things happen to children at certain times in their development, then they turn out certain ways in adulthood, and it's almost. I don't mean to be. I don't want to swear. I was going to swear, but it's almost predictable.
What were you going to say, Catherine?
I was just going to say the reason that we're all alike is because pretty much that's how every family was during those generations. It's a generational thing. And,
Wow.
you know, the biggest lesson I learned as an abused spouse was that whether it's your spouse or whether it's your parents or whoever that's doing the abusing, when I left my spouse, that abuse quit from him to me. What my mind tried to do was keep me in that abuse every day afterwards. Our abusers abuse us for a very, very short time, you guys. It is us who then take that and abuse ourselves with it for the rest of our lives. And I just refuse to do it. I'm sorry. I just, if it happened back then. This is 60 years later. Who the hell cares? Like it, and I'm talking personally. I'm not talking about you guys. I'm not trying to say I don't care what's going on with you guys. I'm just saying from a personal level. I found out I had to stop the abuse. And it wasn't the abuse coming from other people. It was the abuse coming from myself, carrying it year after year after year. That's why I love that. And I've said it before, this little story about the two monks that were walking along the path and they come upon this beautiful woman and there's this little bit of water in front of them. And she's like, oh, how am I going to cross the path and without getting wet? And the one monk says, well, I'll pick you up and carry you across. So he did. And then he put her down. And then they went on. And hours later, the other monk was like, well, why did you pick her up and carry her over there like that? You shouldn't have done that. We're not allowed to touch women or whatever their rule was. And the other guy looked at him and he said, man, I put her down 3 hours ago. Why are you still carrying this? And that's what we do. Yes, we were all abused as children, some of us worse than others. But it's what we do with that. Do we just keep being the victim for the rest of our lives over it? Do we ruin an entire lifetime that we're given because we don't get what we need in that first few years? No, we have to learn how to give that to ourselves. We have to learn to give what we need to ourselves. We have to learn to mother ourselves. We have to be the mother that we wanted, because our mothers were all fucked up, you guys, whether you believe it or not. Like my mother didn't raise me. Because she was so messed up. Like she put me off on somebody else, and that person was messed up too. And she knew that person was messed up. So, I could hold all kinds of grudges over that shit, but it's not worth my time. It's not worth my health. It's not worth my angst. It's just not worth it to me. Everybody was messed up. Everybody did the best they could with what they had. And maybe it's easier as a woman, especially if you've had a child and going through the physical experience of being pregnant and all that baby does to you, when you're pregnant. drains all the calcium out of your teeth and your bones, and then you go through labor, and maybe you understand more of what a mother has to go through, and at some point it's like, holy shit, no wonder she was crazy, like it's. And now, because of the situation I'm in, it would be extremely easy for me to keep rebelling against my parents, like stay in that same stuck place. It would be super easy to do that a lot of times. But we really, I mean, it's up to us. We are the abuser. They may have been messed up. They may have done us dirty or wrong or not done or whatever. But that was 60 years ago. Like, how long are we going to abuse ourselves with that shit?
Why do you suppose we carry it that long? You have any idea?
I don't know. I don't know. Because it's familiar, because it's easier than being responsible for ourselves.
Is it?
It's
I-
easier to blame somebody else than it is to take. I mean, not that what we have to take, in my mind now, just in my crazy mind, you guys, what I have to take responsibility for is that I chose this life. I chose the circumstances. I chose my parents. I knew how they were going to treat me. I chose it anyway, even though my guides tried to talk me out of it. Just like I chose the CRPS. I chose everything I've experienced. And I have to take responsibility for that. That's how I balance it. Some people are not convinced that we agree to these things before we come in, and that's fine. But they have to find another way to balance it, but that's how I balance it, because that's what I truly wholeheartedly believe and have experienced. But somebody else has to find another way.
So it's soul development, and really to worry about whether we're going to get soul developed or not would be academic, because we're getting it. Period.
Well, I think Catherine made a good point though. And like I said, I'm still not totally sold that I agreed to do all this, but at the same point, I'm not closing off my thought process either. But I do, and I think it's a process, and it is a way of, your mind getting to that point and you getting to that point. And I'm working on getting to that point of accepting and saying, okay, I've got to, and I'm getting there. It's taking me as long as it's taking me, but I'm getting there. Hence why I want to try and reestablish something with my real mom, even though it may not be perfect or ideal. I cannot say that word. Perfect, I'll say perfect, but not what my ideal thought process would be, because I'm not setting myself up for that, but I would like to try and get to a common medium to let her know that I don't hate her anymore. I've grown and looked at the past through a different lens. And while I can't change what happened, but like you were saying, Catherine, I can change how I let it approach me and how I hold on to it. And it's getting better. Yes, I still have my moments where I sit there and, like this book kind of, I don't want to say reopened it, but it, made me think about it again of what I, feel I didn't have, but I'm trying to even reframe that to at least see it for what it was and not let it affect me as much now. And I think that's where I can move forward, is day by day, year by year, as best I can, change that mindset to where I don't let it hold me down or hold me back in trying to find, relationships and people. And that's why I love this group so much, because, I genuinely love all of you and care about all of you, even though we've never met in person, but there's a connection, and so with that, I probably would never have been able to be that, at this point, had it not been, for some things I went through 10, 12, 15 years ago to put me on some of this process and path, you know. So in that, I do agree with you in a lot of ways, Catherine. We do have to finally get to the point, I can't change what happened, but I can change how I let it affect me in moving forward, and not let it be the catalyst, but yet let me be the catalyst to move forward and grow in my heart and the love I have to give, just in general. And I think that's where I'm trying to go from.
That's the hardest part, learning to create a better response to all the things that happen to all of us. It's 90% or 80% what happens to us. And the biggest part is the response, 20% of how we respond. Because it's so much easier to react instead of respond.
I waited too long to contact my mom. She's in her 80s, and I wanted to tell her that I forgave and that I was able to move on, but it only took 63 years, and unfortunately, she's not on the same plane, not working on herself. So rather than do that, she's just given up, and I think my dad said she's in dementia, and she's losing her memories, and I think in some ways intentionally. I mean, but I'm sorry. I wish I could have made that connection and let her know that I was wrong for holding her to that level for so many years. Jesus God Almighty, what did I expect out of that lady? But that's what I did.
I just want to say, because I'm going to have to jump off of here shortly, but we are spirits. We are spirits. We're just wearing these suits for a short time, and any of these people, whether they have dementia, whether they've already passed over, you can still talk to them just like you're talking to me, and they still hear you. They get the message. I don't ever feel like it's too late to deliver a message to somebody. It's never too late, even if they're, quote, what we call dead, because we don't die. So talk to them. I mean, you may not see or hear, or you're probably going to feel them when you're talking to them, even if you don't see or hear them. But it's important to have those talks, even if you think it's silly or stupid because they're not here. It's important to have those talks from both sides, because when we get to the other side, from my understanding and the way Jesus explained it to me, it's not like God brings down this wrath of judgment on us for everything that we did wrong. But we do go through a life review, and we see how our actions affected other people, and we feel what they felt when we said to them whatever, or did whatever, And that is like a self-judgment. Like we beat up on ourselves over the things because we're like, wow, I never realized me saying that made that person feel that way. That wasn't my intent. So having those communications, whether someone's here alive with us or not, is super important. Sometimes and if you're angry, that's okay too. Tell them everything you're angry about. It doesn't all have to be peaches and cream, because life isn't just peaches and cream. If you are holding resentments about something or someone, even if they're still alive and you don't feel safe to confront them, you can still confront them in spirit, or on a spiritual level, go to that person, have that conversation, and it works, guys. I have had situations where it was just total headlock with somebody over whatever, and like I will go and speak to them in spirit over this thing, and somehow this turns into this. Those spirit talks really help, even if we don't think they are, even if we think they're silly or stupid or whatever. Sometimes it helps just to get check, like write it all down and then burn it, or type it into the computer and then erase it all, or but sometimes just saying those things, because we're taught as kids not to talk badly about anyone, and so we kind of hold ourselves to that a lot of the time, but it makes for a lot of inward warring, even if your head is saying, oh, well, I shouldn't say that to them or whatever. If you don't say it, you're still saying it inside, just because you have the wherewithal not to say it outside, you're still saying it inside. And that is where the abuse, and that's where, like, it's our insides we need to worry about keeping straight more than anything.
Thank you for that last bill a little bit. And I tend to agree. I think if we, for me, speak to God and, give it and open it up in there, in a roundabout way, even if we don't see him or talk to him, I think it allows it to be there. And now whether or not God allows them, or if they open themselves up to accepting and receiving that, I think, but I know for me, a lot of times just even getting it out just helps relieve me, even, and I feel better. And then I don't focus on it quite as much. May still be in the back of my mind and every now and then rear its ugly head, but I'm not like right there in that moment going, and then it just festers and keeps going on to where and I tend to do that sometimes, and I've learned that about myself. And so now I'm trying to, when I know something's really getting to me, I tend to try and somehow get it out of me. At least at that point, I'm like, okay, I've gotten it out. Let me get it out and not focus on it, even though I know down the road I probably won't circle back around to it. But it helps in that moment. But now with us being, pretty much at the top of the hour, if anybody has any last final thoughts or comments, because I know Catherine has to go. I know Samantha has stuff going on with her family. Sorry she couldn't be with us this morning to actively join in. I would have loved to have heard some of her viewpoints too, but hopefully next week, maybe in that she can kind of revisit it a little bit and then, jump in there. So any last thoughts, anybody?
I'll jump quick because I'm going to jump off. Be kind to yourself. If your life is ruined because people haven't been kind or loving or whatever enough to you, you have to be that. You have to be your own best mother, your own best wife, your own best husband, your own best friend. You can be all of those things to yourself. And I don't mean you have to isolate yourself, never talk to anybody, but what screws us up, and I don't even know where we get them from. I think our generation got them from TV, the TV shows that were on, but we have these expectations of what we think a mother's supposed to be, a father's supposed to be, a family's supposed to be. We have these expectations. Exactly. And when it doesn't meet that TV version of what we think it's supposed to be, then we like ruin our whole lives over it. So, be your own best sitcom, I guess.
Only when she married the younger kid did it mimic my family.
I love you guys. Have a great week.
Yeah,
All right, guys.
love you all too.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, Lori. Thanks, Dan.
So with that, that's for this week. But if you like what you heard or want to join us, you can always find us on Facebook at Mindset Mastery Collective. You can also find us on YouTube at that same Mindset Mastery Collective, or on our website. You can, any of those ways, you can find links to join us here on the Zoom or be on the panel and share your thoughts. We would love to have that. So with that, for the Saturday Morning Mastermind, see you guys next week. And there's Samantha. Any thoughts, Samantha, or are you just here to log us off?
I'm just here to log us off. You're doing great.
Okay, then that's it. See you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.